Welcome everyone. I'm Nora Rotz, MANTEC's Marketing Manager. Thank you for joining us for our July webinar in our Manufacturing Matters series, where we explore topics that are top of mind for manufacturers. Today, we are joined by Jennifer Simpson, President of Wavelength Marketing, who will be co-presenting Solving the Labor Crisis, Attracting the Right People, Hiring for Culture, Training for Competence, along with Kent Keller, one of MANTEC's business advisors who specializes in workforce engagement. This will be recorded. We'll be sharing a link to the recording after the webinar in our follow-up email, along with a copy of the slides. There will be time at the end for questions. I encourage you to send those questions in the chat as they come up, or you can ask them yourself by unmuting at the end. With that, I'll turn it over to Jennifer.
Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Jennifer Simpson Peterson. I am president and co-founder of Wavelength Marketing. We are a lead gen and branding firm in Lancaster County, and we specialize in helping clients bring leads to them in all forms for their specific needs. And the type of leads we're going to talk about today are talent acquisition, the people that you need in order to help your company grow. So I'm going to jump right in. We have a lot to talk about today. And as Nora said, hopefully we'll have time for questions at the end. So can we solve the labor crisis? We can't solve the labor crisis because, as we know, we've had skilled labor shortages. There's all the dynamics from 2020 that we're dealing with. But can we solve your labor crisis? That's what we think we can do today, is help give you some of the tools and the tips and direction that can bring on the talent that you need today. So that can be done if we attract the right people and then we onboard well enough to keep them. And that's a topic that Kent is going to touch on as we move through this morning. A key thought that I want people to kind of keep in mind as we move forward today is, regardless of the job market, the best employees can always be choosy. So it really has nothing to do with whether or not people are working from 2020. Good employees have lots of choices. And what we're going to do today is give you some tools on how to make yourselves attractive to the types of people you're really looking for. Because we don't want any bodies, we want the best bodies. So maybe you're frustrated because you feel like you're doing everything right. I can't tell you how many people we've spoken to who are doing the right things and not getting the right results. You have the jobs on your website, you're using job boards, job fairs, you have current employee referral programs with incentives, but no one's using them. You utilize social media because that's where people are, and yet crickets. We have clients who have had job postings since December with not a single applicant. Why is that? Or maybe you're getting applicants who simply aren't qualified, or they're burning and churning. They're coming in, they work for a couple of weeks, and they're gone. We have to stop marketing jobs. Candidates aren't looking at jobs, okay? That has a lot to do with why we aren't able to get the people that we need. We need to shift our focus because candidates are looking at your brand value, what you stand for. There's some research out there that talks about how last year we had so many negative experiences that employees are looking for places where they can work, that they know the employer has their best interest and is going to provide a positive experience. Amazon's one of those options, but candidates are looking at your brand value, who you are and what you bring to the table for them, so they can bring something to the table for you. That's culture, benefits, growth opportunities, community involvement. Some candidates are really into that aspect, how you treat your customers, what your service orientation is like. So they're looking at your brand value, and you have to look like a great place to work, not just be a great place to work. Because a lot of us have great benefits, we have great cultures, but we don't talk about it and we don't promote it. And that's one of the barriers that we need to overcome. So this is actually Hershey's careers homepage. And obviously it's too small to see the detail at this point, but I do encourage you to look at it because it's a great example of a company that is looking like a great place to work. They're using images of their staff, of their facility, of their team. And this is just one touch point within the candidate's journey, but it's a really important one and gives us an example of what we're talking about. So as we said, the job seekers are looking for proof that a company treats its employees well. So let's ground this in what we're actually trying to achieve. What's our goal? Are you looking for bodies? You're just trying to bring people in, you're using a salary, $15 an hour, $22 an hour because you have slots to fill, or do you view employees as central to your growth plans? So it's filling openings versus acquiring talent. If you're just filling openings, recruitment marketing is probably not something that you need right now. You can just keep doing what you're doing. But if you're actually acquiring talent tied to a strategic objective, that's when recruitment marketing really comes into play. So here's a great way of sort of summing this all up. This is a direct quote from a client that we worked with last year. And during our onboarding and our assessment session with him, he said, I can't grow without good talent. I have to stop taking on new clients and I have to stop taking in new orders because I don't have the people who can do the work that allow me to grow. And he was able to quantify this issue for himself. He was looking for a $2 million sales increase. He knew how many employees he needed in order to get to that benchmark, what shifts he needed them to work, but he couldn't do anything because he didn't have the people. So what is recruitment marketing? Well, it's assessing your talent needs, using the full range of marketing, all the tactics that may be appropriate for your market and your candidates, customizing messages and directly targeting the best targets. In other words, who you're looking for, what they need to hear from you, not what you want to say, but what they need to hear, and where can we find them directly and target them instead of using just the shotgun approach. So that's everything. It's digital advertising, paid Facebook, paid LinkedIn when it's called for, content marketing, social media, direct mail, influencer marketing. I don't know if anybody is using that. That's really where you're directing your messages at family members or associates, girlfriends, boyfriends of the candidates you're looking to onboard, because they have a say in their career decisions. Job fairs, job boards, the employee initiatives, and of course, employer branding. So essentially, employer branding is controlling how you present your company intentionally to the outside world. It's the messages you create, how you promote your authentic messages of who you are. It is different from regular branding. The regular branding is your brand promise to all of your constituents. Employer branding is focused on your messaging to recruits and the talent that you want to put in your pipeline and nurture over time. So these are the messages you're going to find in your recruitment materials, your employment microsite, and things like that. So that's the core distinction. Employer branding is bringing your culture forward. Again, we're going to talk about how we're going to know who you are and how we're going to know who they are. And we're going to talk about how we're going to bring those things together. So here's a good example of the pieces that we want to have in place. It's who we are. Here's what we do. Here's what we're like. And here's what you are. So in this particular infographic for an employer that we were working with, we felt those two central messages were the most important. This is what it's like to work at our company. Here's who we believe you to be. And then that allows the candidate to identify if this is a good fit or not and move to the next level. Employer branding is telling your great place to work story. And again, as we talked about, that's bringing your culture forward, letting people take a glimpse inside. Here's an example of a company that uses, this is actually an onboarding piece for them. It's where they begin the process of sharing culture when somebody becomes a new hire, how things work, what you're going to experience here, but they share it as part of their recruitment process because it gives people from the very beginning insight into what the experience will be like as they come on board and how they then move through their journey. This is married with a video that includes testimonials from current employees who've been there as short as 6 months and as long as 22 years, where they talk about core values of the company. So this is a great example of having dual purpose materials that you can use as part of your onboarding, but also part of your employer branding initiatives. So what are these unfulfilled positions actually costing you? Because there is a cost, there's many costs. And today we're just dividing them up into two primary buckets. The first is the human cost. And this is relevant to what we're going to try to do today. The human cost is as you have these unfilled positions, you have fewer people taking on more work, resentment at being overworked, inefficiencies in training people who come on board and bolt. And the bad news here is that all of these things and other dynamics make your good employees the perfect target for other people to poach, which is precisely what we want to not happen. So it's critical that we bring on quality candidates so that we can protect ourselves, much in the same way we protect ourselves from customer loss. The business cost, there's lots of different ways to measure this. I don't know how many of you have experienced this. I've heard a lot of this for my clients, which is, are your customers asking if you actually have the capacity to do the work? You may not be able to upsell. Perhaps you've had to stop prospecting because even if your clients don't know that you have a shortage, although it's relatively easy to figure out, if you're in a skilled labor industry, they'll know that there's generally a problem across the board. And at some point, people are going to wonder if you can actually do the amount of work that needs to be done. Some companies may have a percent of profit assigned to each employee. And there may also be formulas in terms of the value of each employee times the number of days it takes to fulfill that position equals the loss over time. But it's really important to quantify this loss because we need to make the case not just for the HR department, but this has to become a strategic initiative that leadership is behind. Recruitment marketing is not free. It doesn't have to be exorbitant, but there is a cost associated with it. So we need to show the relationship between the loss and the benefit. The unfulfilled positions do interfere with growth goals. And like I said here, it's not just a siloed HR function anymore. So we already talked a little bit about how your employer brand is different from your regular brand. The process of building your employer brand really should involve multiple departments at your company. So a lot of times we see leadership coming in, operations, HR, people coming together to identify not just who they are and what they stand for, but what they can offer, the culture they want to promote, and the types of candidates they want to bring in order to achieve specific objectives. A great example of how you can represent your employer brand separate from your regular brand this is a regional company that has a very robust employee recruitment program. You know, on the HB McClure is their regular brand logo. It's a logo. And then we've got the Team HB, which was specific just to the employee recruitment aspect. So building the profile of your target candidate is possibly the most important part of making recruitment marketing work. We always recommend that you use your top employees as your benchmark for the types of people you're looking to onboard. It would preferably be between 8 and 10. If you're smaller than that, obviously you're going to want to look at as many of your top employees as you possibly can. And you can define that based, really any way that you want. It's the soft skills like reliability, commitment, work ethic, contribution as a team member, and then the hard skills in terms of literally and physically what they are doing for the company. We usually build a matrix, which is how we categorize individual current employees and then the different types of skills that we're looking for. And then we go out and we do some different types of research, which is our secret sauce, on how you can identify commonalities between the top employees, capture those commonalities and use it to develop creative, which we'll take a look at in a minute, and messaging that speaks specifically to the people that you're looking to target. And also inform your media placement. I have no doubt that many of you have been approached by all kinds of solution providers, many of whom are excellent with different types of solutions. And if you don't know who your target candidate is, you don't know where to go in order to reach them, it's hard to make decisions about where to spend. So digital advertising with a local newspaper might sound great because you've got the impressions, or billboards might sound great because, again, you've got the awareness and the visibility. But at the end of the day, if it doesn't really match up with where your target candidate is getting their information, then your investment has not been well served. So the understanding of the target candidate very much informs the tactical decisions that you make. Some of the things you could be looking for, really any commonalities, but family focus. How much are they into their family time? How much do they enjoy travel, outdoor sports, car shows, theater and the arts? All of these things look just like they're part of your candidate's personal life, but really they help you put a focus on who you're looking for and what they need to hear from you. So here's some examples of how we put that into play. And there's lots of different ways you can segment your candidates as you're moving forward with your creative development and your messaging. So for this client, they were looking for third shift, very difficult to find. And it needed to be somebody who they described would be walk, talk, and chew gum. This was someone who was highly independent, highly creative, but also willing to do everything from the blueprint stage all the way through to the bench work at the end, which they felt was a unique combination, and be willing to work the third shift hours and give the first shift a high quality product so that when they picked up the next morning, they could move seamlessly into the next stage of development. And they felt that they had had a lot of trouble finding that person before. So when we put the matrix together, then we identified what these people really were looking for. This particular subset may be very different from what you're looking for, but these people were looking for more time to do the things that they enjoyed. And that was the commonality in why they were choosing to work third shift, or even in some cases, second shift. They wanted to do things that they enjoyed doing. And so that's some of the creative and the messaging that we brought to bear for this particular client. And I'm proud to say we worked ourselves right out of a job on this one. They got their number of employees, not just candidates, but employees 3 months earlier than anticipated. So we know that this strategy really does work. You can also segment by age group. We'll talk about some preferences by different generations shortly. Here's 3 very basic examples of segmentation and messaging based on age group. So at the top, you have simple, join our team. This is 18 to 25, probably not in the high skill set area yet, looking to join something. Simple message. In the middle, we're more at a 30 to 45 range. This is someone we know has a little bit more experience, but they're looking for that career and family balance, the work-life balance. And so that's a core message that we put in front of them. And at the bottom, this is 45 plus, maybe even closer to 50, 55 plus, because there's still a lot of value for this particular industry, and that may be true of yours as well, in the older population. And these were the folks that we profiled as being interested in having a clear path to retirement, in part because this was an employee-owned company. So lots of factors come into play. Segmenting by skill level. This is right out of school. We know you don't have a lot of skill. We have our own in-house university, but you have the soft skills and the qualities that we're looking for in employees. Below that, you have the skills, now get a job. This is a mid-skill level. And then next to it, this is a highly expert, very specific type of role where we actually expanded geographically because this type of person is so hard to find. So in that case, it was a mixture of messaging by skill level and expanding our geography to recruit. So we have an idea of who they are, what your profiled employee does, tells you how to find your future right fit employees. And some of the examples are geofencing competitors. Lots of people are using geofencing now, so you're drawing the digital fence around competitors. But we encourage you to think outside of that and geofence short-term events like the Carlisle Car Show. Now that we're doing more face-to-face things, it's a lot easier to start digitally targeting events in places where people are going, who share the same kinds of interests that you know your top candidates do, or your top employees do. IP targeting is an option that can reach people very directly and precisely at home if you're able to identify regions where you have a cluster of target prospects. One of our clients, we were able to identify a very interesting commonality was that a large group of current employees were coming out of the same high school, even at different years, so they weren't clumps of friends, and they were connecting one-on-one socially, and we were able to use that information to target a very small region where we could do IP targeting, which is delivering messages directly to somebody's home computer. And then, of course, there's the options of paid digital advertising. Facebook works extremely well for many positions. It's highly trackable, highly measurable. You would not use paid LinkedIn for some types of positions, but you would for other. We find paid LinkedIn to be extremely successful for food, pharma, some of the more managerial and up. But again, knowing who we're targeting really will help tell you where you're going and what you're going to use. So some generational hiring considerations, looking at the broad categories, obviously there's people who flex in and out, and these are generalizations, but boomers who may offer a lot of skill sets for many of us on the call today are often looking for part-time, flexible hours. They're looking for stability, benefits, and interestingly enough, what they want you to tell them about is the day-to-day role. What are they going to be doing? That's extremely important to them. In terms of reaching them, you would use a combination of traditional, so that's the rapidly becoming obsolete print, but it still exists, but they are more partial to a mixture of traditional and digital as opposed to the other audiences, which really are digital only. Gen X, they're looking for the growth opportunities, upward trajectory. They want the work-life balance, training, and they want their messaging, again, to focus on culture. It's a bit of a difference from the boomers who want to know what they're going to be doing. And Gen X is a digital reach audience. Your millennials are also looking for flexibility. Actually, all of them are. But I think the definition of flexibility is going to really be changed for some of these people because we've been remote for so long. And some people will still have the expectation of remaining remote or crafting their own hours, which is something employees really need to think about. But millennials are looking to use technology in their jobs. And even if, you may not think that you're offering technology in an exciting way, but you may actually be able to take what you're doing and saying, you're working with all of this high-tech equipment to develop product for the military, as an example. And you can use those as exciting messaging for people who want to be part of that. They're looking for mentors and personal growth. They want their messaging to focus on culture, and it is a digital-only group in terms of reaching them. For Gen Z, very different. This is a purpose-driven group. They want to be part of something. They want to know that they have a higher purpose, not just an employment purpose. They are interested in learning and mentorships. They want the flexibility that all of us want, but they want their messaging to focus on your core values, which is different from your culture. They want to know what you stand for and how that translates into how you behave as a corporation. They're also looking for uniqueness in an organization because this is how they view themselves. They view themselves as unique with something to offer, to be part of a bigger purpose. They want to use technology in their jobs, and they are a digital-only reach audience. So another very important topic, I really think we could almost do a whole webinar just on this, which is reaching the currently employed. It's very difficult because often these are your best targets, but they're not actively looking. So we use a grass is greener type of approach where we cultivate the idea over time. This is a long haul campaign, not a short-term fix. Over time that you really do have something that they're looking for that they may not be getting. We do not engage in negative advertising, so we're not drawing direct comparisons between this company and that company. It's really more like, you may actually have a dead end there, but we're an employee-owned company, and so it's a longer-term road to success. And how much stability do you actually have? Is it paycheck to paycheck, or is there a retirement plan here that gives a good living today and in the future? We also have a very small micro shot of a screen that uses a micro website dedicated specifically to messaging that cultivates over time people who may consider moving from one employer to another. Campaign performance. As with everything, we should be measuring what we're doing, but we want you to identify your metrics before you launch. Don't wait until you get your geofencing report or rely just on the applications that you're getting. Before you start, understand what metrics you actually can capture. What are your expectations? Obviously, it's it's applicants and hires, but there will be more components to these campaigns. And so a lot of people are going to say, well, let's focus on the clicks. Let's focus on the clicks. But you can't just focus on the number of people clicking through. You have to look at a holistic picture. We actually use really interesting behavioral software that we capture people's career pages before a campaign begins. And we look at the number of interactions. So maybe it's 18 clicks at the top of the form and only 3 at the bottom, and 25% scroll rate to the submit form. And then after we put certain campaign elements into place, maybe it becomes 85 people started the form and 67 people clicked, or maybe it got even worse. But the point is, we're using behavioral software to tell us how we're doing, taking as much guesswork out of the process as possible. So I encourage you to work with your providers, whomever is helping you craft your plan, to identify metrics before you launch so that you can know how you're really doing and make adjustments as necessary. Benchmarking your current state. I just kind of touched on that with the Hotjar, the behavioral benchmarking, and using tracking mechanisms. Some people like to use unique phone numbers. We do that because it also allows us to monitor how calls are going and then make improvements to customer service experience at the same time. You can use dedicated URLs, ad tracking performance, but make sure you're building as many tracking metrics into your program as possible. Lots of people are using employee referral programs, or let me say, lots of people have employee referral programs that aren't being used. Some people are, it's going great, but a lot of people we talk to say, oh, we have this, but nobody's using it. And the key is to make it easy. And that's going to vary based on your particular workforce. The logo that we have here, this was an internal group. This company was they were using the great game of business strategy at the time. So they were creating mini games all the time. This was part of their culture. So they actually created a recruitment challenge. And this is where they, brought their entire workforce together to see which department could do the best in terms of recruitment. Might not work for smaller firms, might not work for your culture, but it's an idea. Paycheck stuffers, flyers in the lunchroom, referral program parameters, give them social media that they can share, work with your current employees to figure out how they actually want to help you drive prospective employees, A few ideas that we would consider outside the box that you may want to put in your toolbox. One is called Smart Direct Mail. This differs from broad direct mail, and I'm getting a lot of employee recruitment mailers at home. One are called EDDM, that's every direct door mailing, and that's where you identify a neighborhood and you distribute mailers within that very specific neighborhood. Smart Direct Mail differs from that in that the recipient only gets a mailer if they have visited a specific page on your website. So if you're looking to build a long-term pipeline or even boost short-term conversions, you can put a code on your careers page so that when people would visit that page, it would trigger a mailer that would be sent to them within 48 hours to reinforce the messaging, maybe to offer a special incentive. If you mention this mailer, you get a $250 bonus. You can do a lot of A/B testing to see what types of offers and language work, but it's really nice because you're marketing to people who've already expressed interest, and it has a lot of filters. So, if somebody comes to the page 15 times, they don't get it 15 times, but it's a really unique and smart way to engage candidates that a lot of people aren't doing regionally right now. Opt-in texting is another option, and that can actually allow you to tie in with a CRM database so that you can do the candidate nurturing over time. And it's great, like if you're using a billboard, you don't want to have a big long message. We always, you have 3 seconds to get somebody's attention with a billboard. And so it may be jobs, text 1, 2, 3 to opt in. Very simple. And then grassroots. If your employees aren't actively recruiting for you, turn them into recruitment billboards. Come up with a creative campaign, give them the shirts, the tchotchkes, the hats. This was a clever campaign, HVAC seeking EBL, employed but looking. So this was a way of getting the employees out into the community and getting people intrigued and wanting to approach them and opening up a dialogue. The circles on the bottom are actually coasters that a younger generation within the employer was they were going out and taking into their, where they interact and leaving behind kind of a kitschy way of getting people, maybe 21 to whatever age, to pay attention to the options. Assessing your online presence is extremely important. Maybe you monitor your customer reviews, maybe you're not managing reviews at all, but some stats that tell us how important all kinds of reviews, not just employee reviews, but actual customer reviews as well. This is a study from Glassdoor. 86% of women and 67% of men would not join a company with a bad reputation. And 50% of these candidates wouldn't join that company even with a pay bump. So we're starting to make the connection between how you're presenting yourself, how you're behaving, how well you're onboarding with what people are saying outside the organization. And 92% would consider changing jobs if offered a role with a company with an excellent corporate reputation. So your review management is extremely important, knowing what people are saying and always responding. This is really difficult for small companies and large because you may not have the manpower in order to do this. So there are some strategies and disciplines that you can use to create a process where you're surely always responding. Do encourage authentic posts. You don't want to say to your employees, everybody go on Glassdoor and post today, because it's totally inauthentic. And it really comes off badly, but there are ways that you encourage people to post on your behalf over a period of time. And then one of the biggest ways to manage your review management is improving your onboarding, making sure that the process of coming into the fold is so successful that you don't have people bouncing out saying, horrible experience, don't even give them a try. Improving ads to attract better candidates is really important as well. We just did an employee branding assessment for an HVAC contractor in New York. They wanted to know what they were doing wrong. And we're going to offer this assessment to you at the end of this session as well. But one of the first things that we noticed was their ad to attract candidates. So I'm going to scroll forward. This is the beginning of the ad. This is the middle of the ad. This is the end of the ad. I don't know about you, but that feels like a lot. And I'm not sure that I want to move forward with a job that at the bottom here says pick up all garbage. Maybe I'll do that as part of my job, but it shouldn't be my first impression of the job. Also, we've got a lot of alarmist language here. Not that COVID isn't serious, it very much is, but this is July 2021. And this is still talking about flattening curves, spiking, all of things, again, which are still relevant, but we want people to come to us because they feel secure. And as a linguist, this language is a bit concerning, particularly what I have highlighted here, which is, what do you have to lose? Well, number one, if I'm already employed, I might have quite a lot to lose. And number two, if I if English is not my first language, I may have high levels of English proficiency, but it might not be my first language. This is an idiom that might be off-putting to me. I might think to myself, I have a lot to lose, so I'm not going to move forward beyond this point. Kent, I know this is an area of expertise for you. Did you have anything you wanted to chime in on?
We're kind of short for time, so we don't want to go into great detail about what good ads look like. And we certainly can point out a lot of horrible things about this ad. In fact, if you go to the next slide, there's just so much language in here about job duties revolving around stocking and warehousing. Material management is important, but I don't know that you need 8 or 9 different bullet points to say the same thing. So let's go ahead a few slides and let's talk about, this really looks like a job description, and that's, job descriptions are so very important. Poorly written job descriptions are going to attract, unqualified candidates, and this is where more is not always better.
Right.
And hiring qualified people is absolutely hard enough. Don't let them leave because you haven't given them clearly defined duties or expectations. It's a huge contributor to new hire turnover. So,
great, thank you. And real quickly, so that we can get to more of Ken's content, is simplifying the application process. Take a hard look at what you're asking people to do. We pulled an example outside of our region, and ask yourself, would I do that? How long is the application that you have on your website? And you know, we've encountered websites that are, as we say here, so broke it couldn't buy candy in a penny candy store, which sounded funny when I wrote it yesterday, but maybe not so much today. But the point is your website actually serving you? Can people easily find where the job description is and where to apply? How many times are you asking them to click? Are you taking them off your website to Indeed, where you're just lumped in with a bunch of other competitors? Be sure to think about the mobile aspect of your applications. How realistic is it to expect people to apply online? Here's some information about how different generations are using mobile devices. And what can you do about it? You can do the opt-in texting. So instead of asking them to do something with the app on their phone, they can, they can be texted your job description, or we use a forwarding technique where we allow people to tag jobs that are interesting to themselves, forward them to themselves so they can follow through from a desktop later. So quick overview of the whole process. I know it was a lot to take in, is to profile your brand, your employer brand, profile the targets, work on your tactical selection, identify your metrics, the creative development and messaging, execution, which could include everything from web work to microsites, mobile sites, content, advertising, and more. Measure, report, tweak, and amplify. We always recommend that if you have something that's working really well, why is it working well, and how can I do more of that? And if you have something that isn't working, reallocate those funds, that time, that effort into something you know that works. Hire and then onboard, which is Kent's Q.
Okay. Recruitment marketing just doesn't end with, once you've identified a candidate and made them an offer. And solving this labor crisis doesn't end with recruitment. It's onboarding is part of this process. So companies that actively invest in employer branding can reduce their turnover up to 28%. And onboarding isn't complete until your new employee is immersed in your culture. Company culture is such a, why don't you go back one more? Let's just spend a minute here on this slide for just a second. That company culture is so important. It's no longer a buzzword or a touchy-feely fad. It's that companies are aspiring to. It's a real thing. And you better know what it is at your organization, because, very simply, it's the character and it's the personality of your business. Just like each of us have character and personality, so too does your business. And you need to know what that is. Ignoring the company culture during the onboarding process is a very, very big mistake. So go on, Jennifer. The poor fit with the culture is one of the #1 reasons for new hire failures. And for many years, employers have been utilizing mentor programs and trainee programs or buddy programs. It's very important that you select the right individuals to participate in that program. If you do assign workers mentors, work mentors or trainees, make sure that you only consider those that are actively engaged and they're positively contributing to your company culture. It's not just the best or the fastest worker that you want to do, because those people could be rule breakers, or they may not be the best people that get along with everyone else in the organization. So make sure you select the right mentors or trainees for programs. And then make sure that you explain in depth to new employees how their work fits into the bigger picture of the organization, whether it's, the little part that they manufacture, make the little widget, could be the most critical part of something like a semi truck, and that's what stops it when it's barreling down the highway at 75 miles an hour. Or maybe it's the products that you make are saving greenhouse gases and emissions because you're using recycled and sustainable parts for manufacturing. Make sure that your employees understand how that work fits into the bigger part of the organization. So thank you.
Great. I think we'll just skip that last slide. It was just additional creative so that we have time for questions. Wrapping up some of the things that MANTEC and Wavelength are making available to help you solve these issues. One is that we have a free assessment of your employee recruitment process, where we take a look at what you're trying to achieve and what some of the gaps are, and we make recommendations for you that you can implement in-house. There's no obligation. So we encourage you to use that. We're also offering the free benchmarking service where we put the code on your website so that we can look at how people are behaving and identify how you can make improvements so that you can get more people to complete. And then Kent, you want to talk about your two options here?
Yeah, Tooling You is an online training platform that has more than 500 topics that are available for training purposes. We found a lot of companies are using this online training platform to rapidly increase skills and knowledge of new hires and gets them to a much more productive level in a shorter period of time. And we can help you. We can talk through those situations with you in more detail. I guess the only thing I'd like to add is, these best-in-class HR functions include business-to-business and consumer marketing tactics and strategies that are going to attract the top talent. If you aren't getting that, make sure that you ask MANTEC to help you.
I think we're going to open it up to questions. You can either pop them into the chat or you can unmute yourself and ask them directly. I'll give you a couple of minutes.
It's like we covered it all.
All right, we have a question come through. Our company is small and we don't have a marketing function. Can we still do recruitment marketing?
Absolutely, regardless of the size. I want Kent to weigh in here as well, but regardless of the size, you can still use the steps, which is still understanding who you are and how you want to present yourself, and understanding who you're targeting. But at that point, when you're small, I think it's more important to know how to choose the right tactics so that you're using, you're allocating your funds as best as you can. It's very difficult, I think, to make decisions when you're being bombarded with a lot of different solution providers. So it's important to know where you're going to get your best reach, which is part of why we shared some of the demographic information.
The only other thing I would like to add is, yes, I think this program is very scalable. Jennifer, lots of companies employ these tactics that are global S&P 500 employers, or they are the small under 25 employers.
What about recruiting for high skilled positions like engineers, physicians, things like that?
In those instances, we have found paid LinkedIn to work extremely well as content marketing, a lot of blogging, organically provided content, public relations. We're doing some recruitment right now for some chemists in Delaware. So we're using these tactics. The culture also has to shine through. This particular client is really quirky and they like that to shine through, but at the same time, we need to show that it's a serious organization with high skill sets. But there are definitely tactics that work better for that type of group.
Another question came in. I'm not familiar with the term Hotjar. Can you explain?
Yeah, sorry about that. Hotjar is the software tool that we use for behavioral tracking. So, it's a behavioral mapping that shows the heat of where people are going on your website, and that's the name of the tool.
Our company or our job posting kind of looks like the example. What would be the first step in attracting better talent?
I think it would probably start with the job description. You need to identify what qualifications, experiences, skills, even physical demands of the job are required. And that's going to help you to build the language that then recruitment marketing experts like Jennifer's team at Wavelength can utilize to help build profiles and help identify the target and profile against your best employees.
Are there any other questions? Also, feel free to unmute yourself if you would like to ask them yourself. Should you be upfront about salary or pay in the job posting? I like that question.
The best answer is it depends. You know, for low skill jobs, absolutely. You know, if you have a higher skill, more professional position, maybe to be more competitive, you just identify a range, or you identify, you know, it's completely negotiable. So it depends is the best answer. Anything else?
I don't see any other questions.
Great. Those were great questions.
I do want to thank everyone again for sharing their time with us today, and thank Jennifer for sharing her expertise. I just, as a recap, we will be sending out a link to the recording as well as a copy of the slides from the presentation. All of our upcoming trainings and webinars are up on our training page on our website, so check those out. And thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you very much.